Welcome to another Being Outdoor Words of Matthias. This time we're going to take a look into Numbers chapter 13, and I want to just point out a few things to you about the spies in the Bible. Now, to kind of go over this story a little bit with you, Moses was leading the children of Israel, and they had crossed the Red Sea. They were in the wilderness wandering around, and they were right at the point of taking the land that God had promised to them. And so to see what was going to become of it, Moses sent out some spies into the land, and those spies were to see what was there and if the children of Israel could take the land and kind of scout it out. And those spies were out there for 40 days, I believe the Bible tells us, and then they came back, and that's what we're going to talk about today. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 25, it says, "And they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word of them unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him and said, We came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities were walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses, and said, Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went up with him said, We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people we saw in it are of men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in their sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." And so far what's happening is they came back and they're giving their report to Moses. And let's keep reading in Numbers chapter 14. "And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept at night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we have died in the land of Egypt, or would God have died in the wilderness? Wherefore hath the Lord brought us up into this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be of prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, Let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, The land which we have passed through to search it is an exceeding good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land, and give it to us, a land which floweth with milk and honey. It says, Only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not." This is a very interesting story, and a story that probably all of us have heard from time to time over the years, especially in Sunday schools and vacation Bible schools. And there's just a few things I want to point out to you, is that Moses sent out these spies, and they all came back with a different interpretation of what they saw. Now they came back, and if you and I just read the whole thing to you to start off with. I'm going to kind of go back through and break it up. But in the early part of Numbers chapter 13, the Bible says they brought back some fruit. And they brought back some of the good things of the land to show the people, and said, Look at this. Look at what's over there. Look how much better we can have it, so to speak. And you know, of course, the people, I'm sure, got excited and started thinking about all the good things that were there. And as they began to do that, Caleb said, Well, we can go into that land and we can take it. And then the other guys, the other 10 spies, started saying, Well, we can't take this land. We can't accomplish this. Do you see the giants that are over there? We're just grasshoppers in their sight. These guys are much bigger than us. They're much stronger than us. There's no way we can overcome it. And one thing that I find very interesting in the story I want to point out is that everyone looked at the same thing, but everyone saw something different. You know, so many times in life we can look but not see. And if we're not careful, our perceptions are much different than what they ought to be. Okay? Now, to kind of give you an example, if I asked 10 people out on the street that had wristwatches on, and I would say, "What time is it?" And I was to say, "What time is it?" And somebody say it was 4 o'clock. Some say it's 4:01. Some say it's 4:02, 4:03, 4:04, 4:05. Depending on how good their watch is, we get 10 different answers most likely. But if I have a wall clock, let's say a 12-inch wall clock, and it's hanging up on the wall, and I ask 10 people, I say, "What time is it?" And they all look at the same clock. They're all pretty much going to be able to tell you exactly what time it is, because all they have to do is look at it and read it, and we're all looking at the same thing. When these people went and looked, they all saw the same thing. They all saw the children of Anak. They all saw that they were giants. They all saw that they were greater than they physically. But what was the difference? That 2 guys saw it as a land that they could still take and overcome, and 10 did not see it that way. And it was their perception of what they saw. They all saw the same thing. They all looked at the same thing, but saw different things. And so many times in life, we have to be careful about how we look at things. So many times we can almost psych ourselves out, so to speak, and have bad attitudes for no reason at all. We can look and something bad happen to us, maybe health-wise or financially, or some kind of crisis in our life, a sick loved one, a child that won't behave right, or is having trouble at school, or whatever it is, and we can get a bad perception of what's going on. Now, if we're saved and we're Christians, we have the Lord that we can pray to and ask for direction and give us comfort and give us grace no matter what the trial may be. But if we're not careful, we can look at a trial and beat ourselves up or kind of put ourselves in such a position that it's hard to think of anything else but that. When you go through a heartache, well, no matter what it is, rest assured there's other people that's went through the same thing. Me and my wife's had some rough things that have happened to us over the years. And we lost a child once, and she got very sick last year and almost died. We had all these things that have happened to us. So we've had a great life and been blessed beyond we could ever think of. But at the same time, we've had some bad things happen. But when those things are going on and you're in the middle of them and everything just seems like it can't go right, we have to be careful that we have the right perception. And I'm saying all that is to say this: how do you get the right perception? Well, first of all, is by knowing Jesus as your personal Savior. You can only have true peace in your heart when you know where you're going to spend the eternity. When you die, your soul's going to go to 1 or 2 places. And until you know for sure where you're going to spend eternity, you'll never have peace in your heart. You can only have true peace in your heart when you're seeking after God's will for your life as a Christian and as a believer. And when you're doing those things, God can give you a perception about life that other people don't see. I heard a preacher say one time that, and this was probably 30, 40 years ago, that someone came and threatened his life after church. I don't know if he was preaching on something and someone didn't like it. They came and threatened his life and brought a gun or a knife or else threatened him. I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but I remember being told that they came up to him after school and they said, "I'm going to kill you if you don't stop. You keep preaching on alcohol or drugs or whatever it was, or I don't know what he was preaching on, but I'm going to kill you because you won't quit preaching on that." And this preacher said, "You're going to threaten me with heaven?" He was being threatened, but he looked at it in a different way than the guy who was threatening him was. He was looking at it as, well, if you kill me, I'm going to go to heaven. And not that he didn't have anything to live for, but his perception. And we have to be careful to always keep a right and true and good perception. So many people look at us, and if we're parents, just stop right there. We have to be more in tune with anybody else as far as what our perception is, because that affects our kids. In the time that I've taught school some, I've seen that kids are a reflection of their parents. And if you have parents who are over emotional and over dramatic and whatever it may be, or they blow up when things don't go their way, or they hear something they don't like and pop an attitude and cause a big conflict. The kids do the same thing to some extent. Because kids watch us adults. That's how to live and act. And how you perceive something, they watch and see. You know, if something happens, you stub your toe at home and nobody's around, do you cuss about it? Because if you do, your kids are looking at you and they're learning behavior. There's a whole learned behavior that kids go through, and they pick up things. And so your perception is affecting your own well-being, your relationship with the Lord, but it's also affecting your children and what they see in you. And I'm preaching to myself here. I have to be careful when things come up with business and I get all these headaches going, especially this time of year, you know, or something don't work right or whatever it is, and we have to go back and fix it, or we're just having somebody we just can't satisfy for whatever reason. I have to be careful to keep that right perception, and no matter what kind of conflict's going on, to keep a right, good, positive perception. You know, when my wife was sick, I'm not the greatest person in the world, but when my wife was sick, I always tried to be positive about her sickness. You know, there were times they told me she didn't know if she would be able to come home. She'd look at my boys and wouldn't recognize them. But you know, I'd always try to just brush some of that under the rug and just be like, boys, she'll be okay. It'll work itself out. You know, stay with Grandma a little bit so I can stay at the hospital with your mama. She'll be fine. Just give it some time. But you know what? If I would have had the perception of, well, boys, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't know if she'd ever will come home. This is getting on my last nerve. I got a business to run, and at the time, my business busting at the seams. This growth spurt we've had in 2016. Well, I got all this business stuff. I don't know. What do you think that would have done to them boys? Oh, it would have been awful. And I could have never had a good, positive experience for them if I would have had a bad attitude. And all I'm saying is, just like in this story, we have to be careful about how we perceive things, our perception, how we react to things. All these guys saw the same thing. They looked at the same thing, They all looked at the exact same thing, but they all saw something different. And then the second point I want to make, and I'll be quick, is that 10 guys were able to influence millions, okay? Think about this. There was probably 1 million to 2 million Jews, people were surmised, following Moses out here in the desert. 10 guys swayed them to the point where they said, we want to go back to Egypt. We don't know why you brought us here to be slaves. This is a bust. We want to go back home. Go back where we came from. 10 guys influenced that millions. But then on the flip side, if you keep reading, and there at the end, Caleb and Joshua stood up and said, you know what? Those guys are bad dudes. They are giants. They are strong. But they're nothing but bread for us, because we have God on our side. The Bible tells us that the Lord is on my side. I will not fear what man can do unto me. And the last verse I wrote, it said, fear not. Because you know what? They realized that God was with them. And if you keep reading, you know the story, is that they went over there and conquered that land. But they conquered it because of the influence that Joshua and Caleb had on them. But you see how 1 million people just swayed one way or another based on just a few people's opinion. You know, I see that so many times in business where someone will read one bad review. You can make 1,000 people happy, but one person who's unhappy because they misused the product, or maybe they have buyer regret or whatever, can badmouth something and sway other people when there's 1,000 people that are happy. And it's just the power of influence. And that goes back with our kids and in life, whether at church, whether at home, whether it's wherever your job or workplace is, out in the hunting camp, wherever you are at, the people around you, you have an influence over them. And my question is, and this is a tough one, is that what type of influence do you have? Is it a positive influence where other people look and say, that man's saved, that man's a Christian? Or is it, he's one of us? Or is it one where he says, well, when he's with us, he's this way, but we know he goes to church? That's probably a worse testimony than them thinking that you're one of them. It's for them to know you're a Christian, know that you go to church, and then you act a different way when you're with them. And that's something all of us have to guard on. But think about those two things. One, all these guys looked at the same thing, but they saw something different. And second of all, the power of influence. Think about what kind of influence you have over those around you, your kids, your wife, all those that you come in contact with on a daily basis, on a routine day. What type of influence do you have? This is Numbers chapter 13 and 14. We're talking about the spies and our influence and looking in what we see in our perception. If you have questions about what you've seen or heard, give us a call at 336-564-2400. And we will be glad to talk with you about any of these things. This is a Being Outdoors Words of Matthias devotional. Thanks for watching.